round two. Hopefully you've just watched the watched sometimes earlier. Whether you want to sit through two in a row is questionable. And hopefully you have watched at some point the first round to see these guys, the Celtiberians, smash through the middle of a Mithradatic army and then end up in a bit of a slugfest with some cataphracts and enemy imitation legionaries, and just about come up on top in a pretty heavyweight war of attrition. So let's see what's happening in the second game, in which they faced the Ptolemaic army. So the Ptolemaic army, well, I think maybe just first talk about the terrain. The last game, there was a waterway, there was some terrain on both sides. It really created a lovely bowling alley for this group of heavy infantry just to bowl down and fight whatever was in front of them. Kept these guys kind of safe and the cavalry kind of out of the way as well. This is a much more open table. None of that stuff's gone down. There's a kind of bald hill there. There's a plantation over here. Big empty space on that flank, and this army's not particularly good at protecting that flank. So my deployment was a bit kind of given here. The Lusitanian ally, with all of these impetuous medium foot, kind of has to go over here and look at the terrain. I think they were hoping to meet a small number of Thracians or something like that there, but it looks like there's nothing there at all. A huge block of pikemen. This is the Ptolemaic speciality. There's mediocre and normal pikemen, so that's pretty good for these guys. They can go in, smash them up first round, score some big hits, and then provided they do start winning, just knock a real big hole in this army. Now the rest of it here, and I suspect I've got my kind of 2 or 3 cavalry just preying on this wing, and a javelinman here who's got an awful lot to do. You've got the whole army is completely stacked on this right wing, so you've got the kind of lance of the companion style cavalry there. You've got some more light horse than I've got, and you've got a big block of elephants and Thracians as well. Again, some lovely old school figures coming out here, been wheeled out. I suspect these guys look like they've been rebased recently as well. So what am I trying to do here? These guys have found they've got nothing as an opposition. These guys have got great opposition. Once you get here, it gets pretty terrible. So what I've really got to do is try and get into this lot as quickly as possible and just throw some nonsense at these guys before these guys can overrun it. So I think the army's going to have to kind of drift left a bit, try and take the elephants on the hill, which may be tricky, try and possibly slow down the cavalry as well, and see if these guys, particularly the 2 or 3 elite, I think, that are in this command, the Lusitanians, can chew up this end of the line and start to overrun it, which is not easy when they're kind of impetuous and difficult to maneuver. But really, I want to get this whole army shifted across here and kind of try and fight on that bit, win here, and expect that I'm going to get beaten here by this combination of lancers and by elephants. So let's have a look at how this army actually was composed. So what have you got here? You do have 8 pikemen, a mix, alternating on that deployment between normal pikemen and mediocre, but mediocre is still fine. They've got a really high base factor, so that mediocre doesn't matter so much at chipping away at the high dice rolls because their base factor is pretty good already. Some screening light infantry bow and some good screening light infantry bow, so I'm not going to be able to drive those away with my 1 or 2 javelinmen. Here is the double Death Star, 2 Thracians, 2 elephants. They're not great elephants at all, but they're covered by light infantry. And then here, 3 of the heavy cavalry impact and a general, which makes it 4, and a couple of Tarentines, which completely outclasses my mounted command on that particular wing. So let's see what happens. My skirmishers kind of make a little bit of a run for it, but they're probably outclassed by these greater numbers, particularly the elites. Everybody's kind of inching forwards here. It doesn't look like anybody's got a massive run at it, but that's a solid line. You're just going to get stopped marching, so it's still pretty coherent as they're marching towards. I think there's been a little drift over that way, not so much just yet. The lighting obviously changed quite dramatically, and you can see I'm really starting to try as they close to push the army this way to get these guys into action and not just have them completely wasted, and start pushing a few people on top of that hill just to take on the elephants. The enemy is staying pretty solid as well, just keeping a nice coherent line, nothing clever, not giving away any overlaps. This is the only overlap on the table that's available to my army at the moment, and these are the only guys who can exploit it, who are not great at doing that due to their unmaneuverability. So what's happened here then, I'm not entirely sure, but in retrospect, look at this, what a shambles really. I think the elephants have obviously driven forward, the pikemen have stopped, and I've ended up in my act to sort of push people over that way. These commands have all become a little bit separated, actually it looks like I've left a unit with this central command. There's the 2 elites, there's the 1, 2, 3 heavies in this command, so they've left someone behind to sort of fill gaps and to try and create opportunity for these Lusitanians to join in. I've got light infantry around the flank, but then they're not really doing much, and these guys have got disconnected from this attack. Perhaps we've even charged away some of the light foot, rolled long. That's probably what's happened. These impetuous troops have to charge because my skirmish screen isn't big enough to cover all of my frontage. So I suspect what's happened here is these guys have charged forwards and ended up slightly disconnected from this command, and the elephants are just piling in up the hill and engaging the rest of my line, which presumably means some Zeistophoria causing all sorts of trouble over there. The burning cart of doom is waiting for a hole because there's inevitably going to be one. This is a pretty interesting fight here. It can go either way, and these guys are still working to get into combat. So yeah, you know, all of a sudden what was a really nice neat line through some sort of slightly rash charges and trying very hard to shove everybody in, it does look like like a very piecemeal attack, which is the last thing in the world I really want to be doing. So here the elephants are fighting. Looks like I've got my javelin into play, which is great. I've got these guys uphill, but they're still taking hits. These are only ordinary ones. The elephants got overlaps. The Thracians are in combat. They've taken a couple of hits there. That elephant's taken one. So this is all right. I'm kind of stopping these guys in their tracks, but I'm clearly not stopping those guys who've just galloped on straight past the end of my line. There will be my 2 or 3 cavalry being driven away there, no doubt. So what's happened here is the enemy pike phalanxes have suddenly stepped forward. I think they are all in contact. It's just these with lowered pikes can't quite get in physically. So that's all fine. There's still some shooting going on here. They're not fighting here. They're still screened, but these guys are in play, and they've ended up with an overlap, and I'm already starting to take a hit. So there's an overlap against me here as well. So my idea of having a nice solid line going into a solid line of pikemen is a bit of a mess. They've managed to engineer, despite all my extra troops over here, they managed to engineer a couple of overlaps and initiate combat on their terms. So a slightly different view of it. Again, you can see there's not combat here because there's skirmishes in between. This is a line of combat. You've got a couple of hits there. Every time I win in the first round, I'm always doing at least 2. So it looks like I've done 2 there. I've got the Lusitanians in and started to get round the flank as well, which is great. But these guys are taking a few hits, and it's a battle of attrition. There's no holes yet. There's nothing been kind of battered in, but at least the line is getting back together now. But this cavalryman is just on the run. There's nothing they can do to stop this sweeping cavalry maneuver. They're just completely outgunned. It might even be that one of them has sacrificed himself to delay it, but this guy's now realized his job is just to delay these guys from rushing unopposed towards the baggage in the back of my army. And the elephants are still going. They're still fighting away. The Thracians have pushed past. The cavalry are now in a position. My lack of ability to defend anything on this open flank feels like it's going to start to hurt me quite soon. Let's hope the guys can crush through the middle quite quickly. So, yep, there we go. Some Celtiberians have butted their way through, so to speak, and smashed a big hole in the pike block. The rest of them are still engaged, but it looks like the pikemen are doing okay, actually. There's a red marker, there's a yellow marker there. He's a general, that's not a marker. There's a yellow marker here. So these guys are actually getting beaten up by these pikemen. If we don't win in the first round, it becomes 2-1. If we start to lose, it's 2-0 to the pike, and that's a real hard thing to fix. So it's really, can these chaps start to turn and chew up the pike before the guys at the front collapse? Tricky one, because they are very, very difficult to turn. They take a lot of pips to do it, particularly if the general's over here. It's all about how lucky I am in command and control going forwards before some of this actually starts to fall apart. And into a gap, looks like there's been some of my guys have died there and pushed forward, and the burning cart of doom has thrown itself in to see what it can achieve. This is a great opportunity. 0-0 first round combat, total luck. Let's see what happens, see if they're still there. But I think the Pontic army, the Pontic army is not really that, not Pontic, is it? The enemy army, all the pikemen are not really that fussed by this this bit of kind of crappy modelling. Well, look, it's still in there, it's still fighting, but here's my cavalry. There's the enemy cavalry. They're just actually starting to wonder, do they run for the baggage, which is down here? Do they run into the back of my line? and it appears that the elephant has smashed through with the support of yet more cavalry. So my holding pattern on the top of this hill has kind of stopped. The javelinman's sort of on his own now. He is trying to stop that elephant, but it's really probably going to be all about these 3 cavalry and this Thracian here, as the pikemen clearly haven't collapsed, and even my light infantry here are pushing back the enemy light infantry. The enemy baggage is way safe there. We're starting to be 1, 2, an elephant 3, 4, possibly 5 units gone, but that's still a pretty big army as well. So the baggage is not central. If I break through, I'm still a long way from getting hold of the baggage. So that's been well deployed too. So here it's starting to be a bit more of a mess. The Zeistaphoria are pushing forward. This now really is just keep them charging and stop them making double and triple moves towards my baggage or towards the rear. The elephant's gone, but that's exposed my javelinmen to some Zeistaphoria as well, and they're not going to last long against opposition like that. And then suddenly this bit where attrition is still going on, I'm picking up 1, and that's a 2, that's a 3, that's a 2. A lot of markers against these pikemen. Yep, you know, my Celtiberians had turned the flank and are starting to chew them up as well, but it's nip and tuck. This is still going on. I know, maybe a yellow marker there. So the pike have toughed it out. They're, you know, giving as good as they're getting there for sure. And yeah, these guys are racing forwards into the open space. You know, if I was Gary Neville, you'd be looking at that on the Sky Sports digital board and going, yeah, you know, the defence on that flank is pretty much non-existent. The wingers are coming in and are going to put some telling crosses quite soon. So what's happening here? So it looks like the elite guys have finally won on a block here, but the rest of the pikemen have won as well. They pushed through too. I probably, given that the army is taking a bit of a battering, looks like I probably had a go against the odds trying to use my javelinmen against these elite Cretans and other things, and that's not worked out particularly well. So it's suddenly going to be quite difficult to turn the rest of these guys round, particularly with the enemy cavalry starting to arrive at speed. So now, as it sort of gets closer, I'm thinking I'll keep trying to see if I can pick off some more hits. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 14 points of damage there, a few more on table. So I must be pretty close to doing this army over, but equally there's quite a lot of my stuff has disappeared as well and has picked up markers too, as these cavalry start coming in and the Thracians and the rest of the cavalry here suddenly start looking temptingly at the back of my slightly out of control and somewhat damaged army here. So what's happening here? Yeah, the Thracians and the Zeistaphoria have swept down off that hill and caught these guys, forced them to turn around. They're completely surrounded. There may even have been someone there at some point, but this is a tough old one, and I'm struggling to get a proper formation back, because that's just not what an army of entirely impetuous foot does. It doesn't organise itself. The pikemen are obviously swinging around into someone here as well. Possibly even the cavalry may have been beaten, but still that leaves the Thracians ready to turn into the flank of my guys as they push forward recklessly and are starting to take some hits as well. Again, some wonderful old school figures there. Look at that. That's really a blast from the past. Those little chaps with interesting hair, all having a go at these much newer Zeisted and wall modelling big dudes as well. So here, you know, you can see this line of infantry, which is actually adds up to quite a lot. I think there was something like six light infantry in the enemy army. That really boosts their resilience because it boosts their unit count, and they've obviously done some damage to my light infantry javelinmen just by sheer weight of numbers and longer range shooting. I can chase them as long as I want, but you know, they're just about ready to go off table now, but I've probably been chasing them for quite some time, and all of these guys have been doing kind of nothing except maybe taking a few shooting hits while they've been doing that. They've not been hitting enemy infantry because the enemy infantry, the pikemen, have taken a lot of hits in the middle, but unfortunately my army has taken more in that big war of attrition in the center. I think really that move when my army went into the attack in piecemeal allowed the pikemen to all step forward and take the advantage in that vital first round of melee, exactly when I needed to be going in a coherent line. No, I'd lost control of the army. They charged, they'd broken up. It allowed the pikemen to bravely step forward, get the first drop on me, and then start to do some damage in that war of attrition. So you know, probably I think I got the the rub of the green in terms of the exchange with the pikemen against my heavy infantry, but nothing really I could do against the cavalry coming in from the flank. The elephants did a lot of damage, and actually this pretty big enemy army has actually taken down the Spanish in the end of game 2.